Our session is now recording, and again, I want to thank everybody for joining Zybion Corporation today for our session entitled Best Practices for Spreadsheet Validation. Before we get into today's session, let's give you a little bit of background on who Zybion is. If you haven't had any interaction with Zybion directly in the past, it would at least be good for you to get some information on who we are and why we think we've got the right to talk to you about these topics today. So first and foremost, Zybion Corporation is a leading provider of global solutions, predominantly technology solutions, for companies that operate in heavily regulated industries. Globally, our primary client base consists of companies operating in pharmaceuticals, life science, medical device, contract research organizations, as well as energy and transportation. Basically, any company that's operating under any heavy regulations is a company that's typically going to be someone that can do business with Zybion and vice versa. We're a developer of software. So Zybion has a family or a suite of software products that are designed to help companies meet very strict regulatory requirements, such as 21 CFR 11. These software products range from compliance monitoring software that actually monitors whether or not your spreadsheets and other applications are in compliance with 21 CFR, to more enterprise class quality management applications, preclinical data management applications, and the like. We support the largest global pharmaceutical, life science, medical device, and CRO organizations globally. Probably of the top 25 pharmaceutical companies globally today, Zybion, in one way or another, through either a technology or a service, supports 100% of those customers. We've been in business for over 33 years, and in that time, again, our focus has very much been around life sciences and healthcare. Overall, the mission of Zybion is to accelerate innovation. We want to reduce costs, improve compliance, and we basically want to take away some of the burden of having to manage many different systems to handle quality and compliance and risk management and the like. We've built together highly integrated solutions that are designed to do that and take a lot of the burden of managing multiple disparate systems off the plate of your organizations. So that's a little bit about who we are. And much of what we talk about in these sessions is obviously around compliance, the compulsory requirements that your organization has to adhere to in order to secure information. So when we talk about compliance, let's first define compliance, at least from the perspective that we're going to speak of it today. Source of compliance requirements, okay? These can include not only your own company standards, collaborator or partner standards, regulatory mandates are a big part of this. And so whatever the source of the requirements, basically, compliance means you have to have an understanding of the requirements. You have to have implementation and controls in your IT systems to meet these requirements. And this one obviously is very pertinent to what we're going to discuss today. And you're going to have to be able to produce evidence of compliance on a regular or as needed basis. That obviously points to the audits and the 483s and, spreadsheets and some of what we're going to talk about today. These are kind of the hot spots for auditors to come in and look at, because they are those places that are usually neglected in the controls of IT systems. At a bare minimum, compliance and security are inextricably linked. Okay, much of what we do to secure applications like SharePoint or Excel or other applications that are floating around the organization is going to help us achieve compliance. So what are some of the applicable regulations that we have to deal with on a day in and day out basis? You've got 21 CFR 820. This is going to cover the overall requirement that a company has to validate computer software for its intended use according to some kind of a protocol. Now, part of the issue that we run into oftentimes with respect to the spreadsheets is that spreadsheets are pervasively used in organizations, and they're used oftentimes, or I should say misused, for the type of data that's contained within. So we have to make sure that we understand that if we're using Excel spreadsheets or the like to basically capture and manage data that's governed by, let's say, 21 CFR 11, then we absolutely have to follow the protocols under which we validate and secure this data. You've got 21 CFR 820.40, regulations for doc control, including doc approval, distribution, document change management, okay? An Excel spreadsheet is a document, okay? And you have to understand that these are the processes that are being automated by the document management system. We have to follow these protocols with a spreadsheet as much as we do any other document. In particular, having audit logs of what was changed inside of a document. And then, of course, you've got 21 CFR 11 details the characteristics that a document management system needs to demonstrate if it's going to be used for primary record keeping, for any electronic signatures in lieu of paper-based records. Okay, so these are all the things that we have to deal with from a regulatory oversight. These are the regulations that are applicable to an Excel spreadsheet and the use of an Excel spreadsheet in these environments. So let's talk a little bit about the actual validation of spreadsheet in regulated environments. First and foremost, the FDA and other international agencies, they do have requirements for the validation of computerized systems to support what they classify as regulated activities. Okay, and guess what? A computerized system may include the Excel spreadsheets that exist on your desktop. The flexibility, the wide scope of use, and unfortunately the overall lack of a standard practice can pose very significant compliance challenges when you're using spreadsheets to support any kind of GXP workflows. The pervasive use of spreadsheets as a primary tool to track and manage these critical processes or data that's governed by 21 CFR 11. This, if you talk to any chief compliance officer, will tell you that this represents one of the most significant threats and weaknesses in any corporate compliance program because of the lack of control of what's happening on the desktop. So in this webinar, some of the things we're going to talk about are what are some of the myths around spreadsheet validation, what are some of the realities, and overall, what are some of the risks of spreadsheet use in these regulated environments. Okay, and as a baseline or a definition, the validation of computerized systems, which is the overriding theme of what we're talking about, is commonly defined as the documented evidence, which provides a high degree of assurance that a computerized system will operate accurately and reliably to whatever its predetermined specifications are, and of course the quality attributes. So we'll talk a little bit about the common myths regarding spreadsheet validation. Myth number one, most common, the FDA has indicated that commercially available spreadsheets cannot be adequately validated and therefore should not be used to support regulated activities. Well, the FDA has not indicated that spreadsheets or any other category of computerized systems should be excluded from supporting regulated activities. In other words, they are not saying that spreadsheets cannot be used for this purpose. Okay, myth number two, the FDA has indicated that due to the widespread use of commercial spreadsheets, these applications are deemed to be accurate and reliable and therefore do not require any further validation by the end user. Very, very important. You cannot assume that because of the widespread use of Excel spreadsheets, that it is assumed that they are reliable and accurate. They are absolutely not. The FDA has absolutely not exempted spreadsheets from compliance with applicable regulations. This is the one that gets people into the most trouble when there's an inspection or when there's an audit that results in a 483. Another common myth, the FDA has indicated that an end user of spreadsheet systems can employ what's called the calculator rule to avoid validation or conducting verification of spreadsheet arithmetic. And they can do this using a handheld calculator. So there's a couple of points on this that are very important. First and foremost, the FDA does not have what we call a calculator rule that exempts spreadsheets from validation compliance requirements. They simply do not have the calculator rule. Handheld calculator can be used to verify arithmetic in spreadsheets, but required validation controls and testing are broader than only the arithmetic accuracy. Okay, very important point. Other aspects that must be evaluated and documented. So system security, audit trail function, data input-output, e-records, e-archival criteria, administrative controls, configuration management controls, etc. These are all things that need to be validated that are well outside the scope of the simple arithmetic. Another common myth is that the FDA has indicated that a company can avoid validation of spreadsheet systems by documenting a risk assessment which states that due to the widespread use of spreadsheet systems, the risk to regulated data created by or entered into these spreadsheets is low, and therefore validation of current and future use of spreadsheet systems will not be required. False. Okay. The FDA has stated repeatedly that risk assessment is not an alternative to compliance. Okay, this is widely stated by the FDA. The FDA has indicated that computerized systems must be validated for their intended use. Okay, this is a key phrase. Risk assessments can be employed to determine the following. There's 4 things. Firstly, relative criticality of the system. Okay, the level of testing needed for an individual system requirement, the level of mitigation or remediation necessary for potential test script failures, but applicable regulatory requirements remain as requirements. Okay, in other words, even though we perform risk assessments against our deployment and use of Excel across regulated data, it's still not going to do away with the fact that it's not ensuring that we meet applicable regulatory requirements. So what are the realities of spreadsheet validation? And we discussed a couple of the myths that are out there, the most common ones. First and foremost, a spreadsheet can be used to support regulated activities, but in order for it to do so, it has to be validated for intended use. And as with most obligate regulatory requirements, there are simply no shortcuts. Okay, there's always that assumption out there because of the widespread use and the common use of spreadsheets that it's like a pre-validated system, and unfortunately, that's what gets people into trouble more often than not. There are no hidden industry secrets that allow avoidance of compliance anywhere. There is no risk assessment approach that trumps the regulations. During a regulatory inspection, either a spreadsheet system will have documentation which provides adequate assurance of system accuracy, reliability, and compliance with regulatory regulations and quality attributes, or it will not. Okay, so there's simply no getting around that. When you actually get to the point where you've got a regulatory inspection on site, one of the first places that the inspectors are going to look is into the spreadsheets, because that's the one area where folks are typically out of compliance. So with that, talking a little bit about FDA 483s, warning letter citations for spreadsheets, they are more numerous than other categories of computerized systems. Statistically speaking, this is the hot spot. And why is that the case? First of all, it's really just a sheer numbers thing. There's such a large number of individual spreadsheets used to support regulatory activities within a company that just by sheer mathematical probabilities, the spreadsheets are going to be the place where people find the most issues. Because there is that history and because the auditors know this, that tends to be one of the first places they're going to look. When you're implementing a multi-million-dollar software application in a company, that's typically going to go through rigorous validation at the point of implementation. The Microsoft Excel is typically not. That's what's going to be, that's what's going to fall by the wayside, basically. Another area, spreadsheet validation typically does not get a lot of support from management. Okay, as we mentioned, other technologies are going to have a much larger purchase price, and when you're investing, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not north of $1 million in software technologies, you can bet that that's going to have CIO and CFO and CCO oversight to ensure that those applications are properly validated. Okay, Excel is not. Excel is going to fall below the radar. The spreadsheets tend to be also customized to support a smaller defined group or individual departments. Okay, so these are not enterprise-wide. It's departmental use. People are doing a lot of copying and pasting of formats. Other technologies, obviously, that are company-wide are going to have the type of visibility that's going to warrant full-blown validation projects. FDA investigators, QA auditors, they know this. They know that the spreadsheet systems are often not well controlled, let alone properly validated. This is their target hunting ground, and when they come in, the spreadsheet application is often the first place they look, because it's often the ones that have design deficiencies related to the requirements that they're auditing in the first place. So, how can we get to a point where we've got recommended spreadsheet validation efficiencies? Okay, what are the things that we need to do? First and foremost is having a defined process. Okay, obviously you're going to have defined process for the large enterprise computerized systems. You need to do the same exact thing for your spreadsheets. You have to make sure that this supports employee efficiency and also improves the cost of doing business. You have to make it easier to present and defend validation documentation with the regulators. Okay. Another big tip here, and when we talk to a lot of our professionals here at Zybion and they're out doing validation projects at customers, what they will always tell you is never start from scratch. It's perfectly okay to plagiarize, meaning previously generated validation deliverables for other systems, they become basically your template for other validation projects within the organization. And if you've gone through a rigorous, expensive validation project of a multi-million-dollar system, then use that same template for your spreadsheets and use it over and over again. Previously generated document only needs to be copied and then modified to reflect the appropriate information for the new project. So your secondary or downstream projects, your smaller projects like those around Excel spreadsheets can be much less expensive and sometimes can even be handled internally if you've gone through a validation with, specific validation consultants from the outside the first time around. Just use that document as a template. Don't try to validate the spreadsheet program. Focus on spreadsheet validations on their particular regulated use. Okay, document and test your spreadsheet requirements, your spreadsheet configuration, or and any applicable regulatory requirements or quality attributes. So don't try to, basically what they're saying, don't try to validate Microsoft Excel. Validate the specific use of Excel spreadsheets in a particular department relative to the particular requirements that that department is governed by. There are a lot of risks associated with the use of spreadsheets. Some folks have tried to get away from spreadsheets. Some folks have tried to use spreadsheets in combination with SharePoint and helping to manage them inside of SharePoint to get some more control over them, and that's great, but there's going to be some inherent risks associated with spreadsheets under any circumstance, okay? First and foremost, the primary risk associated with spreadsheets is going to relate to what we call business continuity, okay? Will the spreadsheets provide accurate data? Will the spreadsheets adequately protect data from being compromised? And there are very good reasons for a company to validate its spreadsheets, even if there was no regulatory requirement whatsoever. Risk. Companies should be aware that the ease of spreadsheet distribution and installation also represents regulatory control challenges. Because of the ability to easily copy spreadsheet templates and spreadsheet formats and distribute templates and distribute spreadsheets throughout the organization without any type of formal check-in, check-out process, there's a greater potential for a system to very quickly drift out of control, or a series of spreadsheets to drift out of control. Basically, get out over your skis, and you simply lose control of the whole situation. Risk. Virtually every experienced FDA investigator and industry auditor with designated computerized system validation or Part 11 responsibilities are very, very much aware that the spreadsheet systems generally have two major design deficiencies. Okay, security and audit trail functions. Okay, so when auditors are coming on site, one of the first places they're going to go is the spreadsheets. And once they're basically looking at two pieces or two areas, I should say, which is going to be the security and the audit trail functions. So we have to be aware of that. We have to be aware about how our spreadsheets are deployed and then how our spreadsheets are audited, how the information is audited, how the information right down to the cell level is audited so that changes are tracked. As well as just the overall security of the document and the security in locking documents down and giving documents the proper rights. Like I said, a lot of people are beginning to use some of the newer versions of SharePoint, which can support 21 CFR Part 11 requirements and storing them in SharePoint, which gives you better control for sure. But at cell level, at audit level, it still has to be done at the actual spreadsheet level. There are other risks associated with spreadsheets. For example, if a company will fail to validate spreadsheets used for regulated activities, then the company is basically inviting audit report findings or regulatory actions. 483s, again, thinking back, one of the most common reasons behind a 483 is stemming from the use of spreadsheets. Companies must consider how they will effectively address system security. So applications on laptops go home and travel with the people. The applications on central servers generally don't go anywhere. So it's much more of a dispersed use, a localized use of a technology, which obviously is going to make it tougher to keep control over. If a specific spreadsheet has been distributed to many staff member laptops. How will subsequent change control and configuration management be handled? That's a big one, and that's one that will drive the IT group crazy. It will drive chief compliance officers crazy as well. So there are solutions for this, and of course there's service-oriented solutions that can come in and simply take you through the validation process and set the proper controls and set the proper processes and workflow in place. And as I mentioned, one of the things we're seeing more and more of is the workflow capabilities in the newer versions of SharePoint being deployed to help with the pervasive use of Spreadsheet. Then there's also tools. Now, as we mentioned in the beginning of the session, one of the things that Xybion does, we make software. We make software that helps companies be more compliant with a variety of different regulations. So one of the tools that we employ is a tool known as ComplianceBuilder. This is kind of a unique application. It's an application that actually can be installed to monitor not only the traditional databases, right? So a lot of times when you acquire compliance monitoring software of any form, it's normally something that's going to be attached to a database application. Okay. What makes ComplianceBuilder a little bit different is we can actually attach it to files, individual files. So at the Excel level, we can actually go down and attach it to individual Excel documents, which can actually track and create audit files and change tracking within an actual individual Excel document. So companies that are very heavy users of Excel in 21 CFR environments will typically use this ComplianceBuilder product to not only monitor their databases, but they'll also use it to monitor individual files that sit out on desktops. In laboratory settings, there's also going to be process controls and lab equipment. Any piece of laboratory equipment that's computerized in any way, shape, or form, ComplianceBuilder can also kind of sit on top of that and monitor that for the proper audit, change, security, etc. Quick things on the ComplianceBuilder piece. Very cost-effective solution for 21 CFR. This is not an application that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. Quite the opposite. It's actually a very cost-effective solution. It records basically all actions in an independent, secure audit trail. It immediately reports and sets alerts for any kind of changes, whether those are additions, edit, and deletions for any authorized user, prompted for a 21 CFR Part compliant approval signature. It captures the electronic SIGs for authorized workstations. It provides device and authority checks that limit access. It supports biometric, non-biometric signatures, including the PKI, as well as it contains comprehensive application security. So this means it's going to integrate into whatever existing security infrastructure you have. Comprehensive set of validation documentation templates and SOPs are built into the system to help you support highly regulated environments. But at the end of the day, what's kind of neat about this and why a lot of people adopt this tool is for that ability to go down to the desktop level with a 5-minute install of a piece of software, which can then sit there and monitor everything from individual cell changes in an Excel spreadsheet to make sure that if you do get audited, that you've got the documentation of the proof at your fingertips to show your auditors, basically. So, in summary, things we've talked about today, spreadsheets are obviously widely used and distributed, uniquely configured computerized systems. They are, in fact, deemed computerized systems, and they're critical to business continuity. The regulatory agencies require these systems to be validated as they would a multi-million-dollar database application. We help our customers in this area with the ComplianceBuilder product. It's flexible software solution. It supports 21 CFR. It supports spreadsheet validation. It was actually originally built very specifically to help with spreadsheet, although it does extend out to other things. It can sit on top of the multi-million-dollar systems, but it's also inexpensive enough that you can go out and get desktop license versions of this to sit on your individual workstations to monitor the Excel and other applications that may sit out locally. So with that, I want to obviously thank everybody that joined us today. I mentioned we keep this to about a 30-minute session, and I think we're coming right up here on 30 minutes. If what you heard today was of interest and you wanted to learn a little bit more about the ComplianceBuilder product, there's a variety of different ways that you can do that. Probably the easiest way would be to reach directly out to sales@Xybion.com. We also have a toll-free number directly into our sales team, which is 877-617-0000. 9700. If you would like to get information about Compliance Builder on the web, I'll direct you out to the Zybion corporate website. And when you come into the Zybion corporate website, you will see under our software piece, if you come down here, you'll see Compliance Builder, and this will bring you into our Compliance Builder information page, which is going to talk about the different real-time compliance monitoring, and over here, the different types of applications, databases, and files that Compliance Builder was built to monitor. So with that, I want to, of course, thank everybody for joining us today. If there are any immediate pressing questions, we're happy to answer those. I don't have any here. There was a couple of questions about specific pricing for the application, et cetera, which, I don't want to obviously go through that with everybody on the phone, but we'll definitely follow back up with folks on how an application like this is priced. But again, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Be on the lookout in the next day or so for an email that will come out with a brief recording of this, and we will also send along, if you haven't already received it, a copy of the full spreadsheet validation white paper that goes along with this, which may go into some additional detail on some of these other areas. So again, thank you for joining us today, and the session is now complete, and we hope you have a wonderful afternoon.